Welcome, Dr. Ejaz.
Thank you.
And thanks for sparing time to share your understanding of the Quran with us. Please provide some background to your work on the Quran and how did you approach it?
Thank you for giving me time to share my thoughts and understanding with all of you.
सर सॉरी गैप हो गया, थैंक यू से दोबारा कर लें, हम इसको कर लें। मैं सिर्फ कह रहा था कि आप इसके
सवाल में थोड़ा सा ना फ्लुएंटली
मैं
दोबारा कर
लें, नीड्स टू बी डन।
पहले रीटेक आ गई।
थोड़ा सा ना उसके ये सवाल जो आप कर रहे हैं इसको रट लें,
रट ही लो।
You don't need to read it out.
मैं इसे पकड़ के खड़ा हो सकता है?
नहीं नहीं, आप पढ़ लें, कोई नहीं, आप पढ़ लें, जरा कुछ
मिला जुला होना चाहिए।
ठीक, ऑन रिकॉर्ड।
Welcome, Dr. Ejaz.
Thank you.
Thanks for sparing time to share your understanding of the Quran with us. Please provide some background to your work on the Quran and how did you approach it?
Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to share my understanding of the Quran with all of you. My own background is that I have done BSc in engineering, and then later on I did MSc in water engineering in Glasgow, UK, and a PhD in water treatment. But my interest in the Quran started around 1991, and I went through all the basic books which people have written on various aspects of the Quran. But somewhere around 1993, a friend of mine gave me the book by Pervez, Islam, A Challenge to Religion, and a few other books by him. And when I read those were quite different from the normal traditional way of interpreting the Quranic verses. So initially I was a bit suspicious, but later on as my own reasoning developed and I started understanding that the issues which were discussed in his books and the subsequent books were very much relevant to human life as we see it on the planet. But in around 2010, I started reading about human psychology. And there was one line which I read in one of the papers which said that in the study of psychology, you don't have to go to somebody else to explore his mind. You should look at your own mind and see what is there, and that will give you insight into any human mind. And that was a great understanding or find for me. And I started exploring my own self, right, the previous life and the new life. Yeah. And that helped me to see that what changes the Quranic understanding brings within your own self and how your own reality changes. So in 2014, I reached that stage where I thought, in fact, a friend of mine asked me to go through Lughatul Quran and edit it. It had already been translated, and he wanted me to go through it and edit some part of it. And I really enjoyed doing that, and in the process, I also understood a lot of terms of the Quran. And that increased my enthusiasm or keenness in the Quran. And the same year, I started translating the book titled Jahan-e-Farda, which was titled The Life in the Hereafter, What Does the Quran Say? And this work was done with the help of my wife, and we edited together. And then I went on to translate another 3 books, The Status of Hadith, and What is Islam, and the last book which is published this year is The Human Self and Allah. So that is how and now I'm translating another. I have already completed the translation of Iblis and Adam, which is, again, we hear about Satan and what impact, what is the relationship between the two, that is the human self and Satan. It is really an outstanding book because there are a number of aspects which I was not aware of, which have been discussed in this particular book. And I'm sure readers will find it quite exciting and very interesting.
I wish to discuss the law of requital as noted in the verse 45/22, where it is stated that the purpose of the human creation is to hold every self accountable for its deeds. Could you throw some light on this verse in relation to human accountability?
My own understanding, and Parvez has also said that this verse is essentially the main focal point of human creation. The Quran says that the verse is translated that Allah created the heavens and the earth as truth. The word used is haq, which means reality, which means fact. And something, when Quran talks of fact, it talks of evidence as well. It doesn't say that it exists, but you won't know it. The second part of the verse is that every nafs, which is equivalent of self, is to be held accountable for whatever it does in this life. And the third part is that nobody will be treated unjustly. Now, this particular verse, if we look at it, it looks very simple and straightforward, that we are responsible for whatever we do. But then the question comes that how does this accountability function in our life? And we must have heard these terms, like what goes around comes around. What we sow, so shall we reap. And Murphy's Law, and unexpected happens at the most unexpected time. So these all are not come to us as concrete reality. But when the Quran puts forward this law of requital, or the law of consequences, then it emphasizes on that, and throughout the Quran it explains that if we do wrong, the results will be wrong. We have a choice in life to follow a particular course of action, course A or course B. But we do not have a choice that if I follow course A and the results will be of course B. So whatever path we take in life, the results will show us that whether the path was right or wrong. So Quran doesn't leave things to any ambiguity. It presents it as an evidence. So in this particular verse, we come to this conclusion by reading the rest of the Quran that purpose of our creation is accountability. And it may appear a bit daunting or something which is challenging, or maybe we want to avoid it, but Quran says that we cannot avoid it. And the modern psychology clearly states that whatever we do in life, our thoughts come first, and these thoughts impact on us. So whatever deed deliberately we do, that has an impact on us. The deeds which we do under compulsion have different impact than the deeds which we do deliberately. So this verse is actually, the whole Quran is explanation of this particular verse. And second is that the meaning which we put on the universe is because of our thoughts. The universe will be meaningless if there was no human being around. And we create our own reality within ourselves. The day I die, that is the physical self dies, that is the end of my life, my reality as far as this life is concerned.
What is the significance of this law on the development of human self and in the establishment of Deen as a system?
Quran is very emphatic on the law of requital. When it says that this law functions in your life, it doesn't leave things to our guess. It gives examples that the nations which follow the right course of action, they prospered and they met successes. The nations which did not, those failed, those declined and deteriorated and were destroyed. So our deeds, the results of our deeds are inbuilt within our own self. So these are not external. This is whatever we do. If I put my finger in fire, even if I don't know if the fire will burn, the finger will still burn. And then it says that if it is burnt, you use treatment and you can treat yourself. Right. But there are aspects of this law which say that we can reach a point of no return, and after that we cannot come back. For example, death is a point of no return. If once we have crossed the death, then that is the end of it. So essentially what Quran is saying is that whatever personality we develop through our own deeds, this is ours. We own it. And we should know what we have developed. And if at any point we realize that our personality has not been developed according to the permanent values, then we have a chance to come back and live our life within the permanent values. And as a consequence of following this law, our consciousness becomes wider. In fact, as far as human consciousness is concerned, Quran does not put any limit on it. It says that there is no upper limit to being righteous. So that is why it emphasizes to acquire iman or a conviction in the values of the Quran and then follow this path through good deeds and righteous deeds. And it says that once you follow these deeds, you will not only understand your own issues, like cognitive dissonance, that is, there can be conflicts within our own mind. It also tells us that by following this law, you will understand how the word works and how the word will work once it follows the permanent values. For example, in the capitalist system, if we follow this law, we will understand that the path which humanity has taken is wrong. And that is why we have problems. That is why there is the increasing gap between rich and poor. And if we look at the politics, human politics, all these issues are being highlighted. But we are not finding solution to that because we are only assuming that we are the physical being. We have nothing non-physical within us which has its own life and which is going to go beyond death. So these are the limitations of not understanding and following the law of requital.
How does this law works in the case of nations?
In the case of nations, because nations are built, is a collection of individuals. And when individuals go wrong, the nations go wrong. And in the case of individual, for example, if I put my finger in fire, it will burn immediately. But in the case of nations, because it is a sum total of so many individuals, it takes time, in the case of law of requital, to take its effect. So that is why nations over centuries start making wrong decisions and then they decline. There is one thing. Second is, with the law of requital, there is another law of respite in the moral world. What the Quran says is that the moment in the moral world we do wrong, the results are not immediate. For example, if I have done wrong to someone, being in position and power, he may not retaliate immediately, but he might retaliate 10 years down the line. Similarly, if I am doing wrong in my life, for example, I am eating wrong food, and the cancer will develop after a period of time. If I've been smoking for 30 years, it may not appear in 31st year, but it will appear in 50 years. Right. But that is the physical side of it. On the self side, whatever we do, it leaves an impact on ourselves. And if we all our life make bad decisions, then at some point these results will show up. So that is called the law of respite. So that has to be understood with the law of requital. The beauty of law of requital as expressed in the Quran is that the Quran presents this as a fact. That the creation of human being is based on this very law. And it is not that it will make an exception because it works within us. So there is no way we can avoid it. So it is to our advantage that we should understand it and then follow it, and then become responsible for our own actions. So the life will become not only pleasurable, but will become very predictable. This will not be a life that it is unknown. I will know exactly what is coming next because the Quran signposts it. It doesn't leave it to something ambiguous or not known, because Quran wants us to live a life not only happy, but assured of the hereafter. And understanding the law of requital is absolutely essential for the development of our consciousness on the vastness side and on the elevation side. So it is really for our own eminence, for our own understanding that we must understand this law, because it is a fact. So ignorance of law over here will not save us from the consequences of our deeds.
Apparently, this law appears to put a lot of responsibility on man. And as human beings, we wish to have freedom without accountability. How does this accountability have responsibility? इसको ज़रा दोबारा ले लो.
ये दोबारा कर ले.
हाँ.
And take a deep breath. होता ये है कि आदमी अपना breath रोक लेता है.
हाँ.
You need to fill your chest in order to articulate.
Right.
तो वो ज़रा time to time deep breath जरूरी होता है.
Apparently, this law appears to put a lot of responsibility on man, and as human beings, we wish to have freedom without accountability. How does this accountability and responsibility provide us more freedom in this life and the life beyond this world?
Very good question, Salim Saab. Because what law of requital does, let's look at the fundamental level. Human beings don't want to be held accountable for their deeds. For somehow they think, particularly people who are rich and powerful, and those who are in a position of influence, they don't want to be held accountable because they want to do things behind the back of the population so that they can get away with that. But the fact is they can't. Ultimately, the results catch up at some point in time, because once the law of respite comes into action. Because the Quran says the moment I have committed a deed, its effects are immediate. The moment a thought comes and I carry it out, then that impact is on my personality. So how does it increase our freedom? I will give you an example. For example, if I say that the life ends with death, and I say that there is no accountability, then I have total freedom to do whatever I like. I've got plenty of money, I've got power, I've got all the resources, I can enjoy my life, inverted commas, whatever it means. And if we really look at it, the enjoyment is one car or two cars or one house, another house, and in terms of, other activities, you understand, like alcohol, drugs, smoking, women or men or whatever it is. But all these are very much confined to this life. What is in it for the next life? But the moment we take responsibility, as the Quran says, and we follow the law as if it exists, we actually come to control our own life. We become aware of our own thoughts. Our consciousness starts expanding. And if I say that the life goes beyond death, see, in the previous one, the life ends with death. Over here, the life is going beyond death. And if we act accordingly, then we will see that later part of life will be better than our earlier part, because now we are directing our energy for the good of others. And when we direct our energies for the good of others, our self develops. And the moment our self develops, we are able to see the outcome of our own deeds in a positive way in whichever society we take. And if it is global, obviously there will be global effects. So it gives far more freedom, not only of this life, but of the next. And it saves us from a lot of pitfalls of this life. So it is very much, if we reflect into it a bit more detail, we will see that we get far more freedom in terms of making our own decisions. Because one of the things which is stated in this verse is deliberate decisions. Deliberate means that I make my own decisions by thinking clearly and deliberately. I'll give you an example. I see somebody begging on the street. I see him as an equal human being sitting there and asking for money. And I look into it that what is his problem. If I have a courage, I should try to solve that problem. If I can't solve that problem, considering him to be equal, I'll give him some help and then move on. The second person comes and he says he's created problems for himself. He doesn't see him as an equal. See, the effects of two thoughts are different. Similarly, we all have seen that when there is a flood, we emotively react and help people. And the same money which we had in our pocket, in our banks, when there was no flood, we never helped all of those poor guys, because it is mostly the poor who are flooded away. So two deeds are different. One is in reaction, emotional reaction. The second one is deliberate, that when there is no flood, we should help others. And why should I help others? Because they are equal, just like me. So I am recognizing that this human being is equal and he is the product of a wrong system. So the moment I look at it, then I will look at the system and I would like to change the system. So that is how mankind then comes together and says, wait a minute, there is something wrong going on. So law of requital actually gives us life, a new life, because it links this life with the next life. And the moment I become aware of it, it gives me life. And once I make others aware of it and put it forward as a logical fact which exists, they will view it and they will start enjoying this life more by knowing the laws. You know, wherever human beings have come to know the laws, they have established themselves and they have benefited. So knowing the law of requital is in the interest of humanity.
Under the system of Deen, how will this shape our court system?
The way I look at it is that it's given in the book What is Islam as well, and also in the Life in the Hereafter, that in a man-made system, the limitation is that we do not know the intentions of anyone. If we train children or we make the learning of or teaching of the law of requital as part of our basic or fundamental curriculum, then children right from beginning will understand that they are accountable for their deeds. And they should know what should be the consequences of their own deeds. If we present it as a fact before them, as a law, like the law of gravity, then their behavior will change. They will accept more responsibility. And I agree that some of them may not. But that is part of the mutual accountability process, that one child who has learned the law of requital, another one is reluctant, then if there are more, then they will influence each other. And that is how the society will develop. Second is that if we take this law into account, then we will have a uniform justice system across the world. Presently, the justice system in one country is different from another. The same human being is subjected to different justice systems. So this is injustice. Because it's the same human being who is moving from one country to another country to another country and subjected to different justice systems. Whereas the Quran says that we should all be subjected to the same justice system. So if we understand the law of requital, by virtue of that understanding, we will be subjected to just one system. And that system is our inner accountability. But that does not mean that there will still be people who will do wrong. So those who do wrong, of course, they will be punished. And Quran has left it to us. But their reformation, that make them realize that what loss they have done to their own life, not only this life, but the next life. Because our hereafter in this life is also affected. And we see it. So our punishments will be proportionate to the wrongs people have done. For example, if a child is brought up badly, and if he does wrong as compared to a child who is brought up very nicely and in a good environment, both can't have a same punishment. But both should be put through the training of the law of requital. So that is how I think, and this is my own understanding, that is how the court systems will evolve and bring this law of requital, and our education system will bring it into the teaching and educating the children.
Thanks for your time and for this elaboration on the subject.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
कितने मिनट
23
हाँ
वो रीटेक निकाल के 20 हो जाएगा
20 हो गए